Thursday night edition of the Frontrunner Football Podcast, reporting back on what's been happening in the last 48 hours or so. What we thought was the PSL came out to support the COVID-19, I guess, reaction from business. But essentially, it ended up being a scenario where Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates were the biggest donors, it would seem, of masks and essential items needed in the fight against COVID-19. So to help me unpack it, I have Jonty and Mazola. Gents, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Much ado about nothing or something, or what exactly did we witness last night? Because I tuned in and then I tuned out. And I was like,
Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs both had a big shout about special announcement, and then it's the fact that they're donating masks, which, don't get me wrong, is a fantastic gesture, and other health equipment to the health department. Don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful gesture, but could quite easily have been encapsulated in simply a press release, and that's it. There's no need for all that hoo-ha. Because also, in these times, I think you're misleading people a little bit, because, everybody's going to think, okay, they're making an announcement about the season, or they're making some sort of more important.
Yeah.
Well, they're making, I don't want to say important, but they're making a footballing announcement. And it wasn't really a footballing announcement as much as it was the fact that they're donating equipment, which, as I've said, is lovely, but press release, please. And that's about it.
Yeah. Mazola, what, do you disagree with Jonty? Were you glad that they came out and showed unity with their broadcast partner and the health minister?
Look, I'm 100% with Jonty on this one. I had a feeling. I must be honest. I had a feeling because Jonty knows. We always questioning what the agenda is whenever whenever we get invites from that has anything to do with the PSL with the PSL, especially maybe at their headquarters. Maybe if it has anything to do with the chairman, we always are wondering what is the agenda, because the last couple of press conferences, and I'm sure you guys have heard me moan about it a lot. Press conferences involving PSL chairman have turned out to be a damp squib, Got the invite, I think it was around 10 o'clock in the morning when I got a WhatsApp text from the PR guys at MultiChoice informing me about this important announcement, and I saw that it had the Chiefs and Pirates logo, and I thought to myself, I don't think it has anything to do with a football announcement about the current season, because it's got and Pirates logos. If it was a PSL announcement, it would have been made clear that it's a PSL announcement, not involving MultiChoice, a live broadcast. That the tech as well. As soon as they live broadcast and with MultiChoice and health minister, then you just know that it just bugs me a lot, this self-importance of, if I can put it like that, because like Jonty is saying, don't get me wrong, it's spot on that they would contribute to the fight against COVID-19 with the essential supplies. But really, come on, send a press release, get more traction out of it via a press statement, get more traction out of it through a social media campaign. The two clubs that are involved that have a huge following in the country, and at the same time, you sitting there telling people social distance, stay at home, but yet we having what one feels is an unnecessary live broadcast. And that could have been communicated via other means other than people getting together. You know what I mean?
No, I tend to agree. It now smacks of a PR exercise, and
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it at all because
I tuned in and then I tuned out.
The interesting thing also is that the health minister tweeted what had happened, what was going on before the press conference even started. So everybody knew what was going on. So why would you watch the press conference after that, especially?
I guess maybe someone somewhere tried to justify it by saying, listen, you guys as a brand or two brands, two teams have a large following. It'll help us entrench this message. But like you say, Mazola, it doesn't quite work when we're all sitting on top of each other in a studio, masks or not. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, the most important thing is the gesture matters. But I think most journalists and people in the fraternity saying, yeah, press release would have been sufficient. Quite sufficient. Okay, let's keep it moving. Some teams are already releasing players before we've even known what's happening with the rest of the season. I'm referencing one Phala, who I guess, maybe, Black Leopards will say, listen, we weren't going to keep the guy and he hadn't done anything to say, when we resume, he's going to be in the plan. So surprise or not really, Jonty?
No, he has barely played this season. He's not been able to make the grade there for some reason. I mean, he was obviously a very good player at SuperSport. I don't know if there's been issues between him and the club, or if there's, if it's what the reason is there. But he's a talented player. It's a surprise it hasn't worked out for him. I do think that perhaps with a coach that who he works with well, he could still do well at Leopards. But for now, I think you can understand why Leopards have done it. I'm not sure contractually. Again, I think I saw Mazola did a story on that, but I'm not sure contractually what the situation there is with Phala, because you can't just release a player, obviously, if he's under contract with you.
Yeah. Mazola, would you like to clarify? Do you know the details?
Yeah, well, so his agency told me that they've negotiated a settlement. And this was when they were discussing, they were renegotiating his contract, which I think had a 1-year option, if I'm not mistaken. He had obviously joined from Sport, a free agent last year in July, had signed until the end of this season, 30 June, and had an option that the club could exercise. And the club made it clear that they were not going to exercise that option, meaning that, if should football resume, then Thuso would obviously play the last remaining matches. So, well, he probably wouldn't have played anyway, because he hasn't kicked the ball for Leopards this year. He's been in the stands very much since December last year, after Leopards lost to Orlando Pirates 3-1 in Joseph Zinnbauer's first game in charge. So their agreement was that, okay, post-lockdown, Thuso would not return to Black Leopards. Therefore, I assume the settlement would mean maybe, a negotiated amount for the remaining couple of months of the contract before June 30. Or because it also becomes a little bit confusing now, because FIFA had said if your contract was 30th and the season is extended because of COVID-19, that means the club is sort of obligated to keep you as a player on their books until the season has ended. So I don't know how they would have navigated that, but at the same, his agency has confirmed that they've mutually decided to go their separate ways, and there will be a settlement paid towards Thuso. I don't know how much that would be worth. Which is, look, I also thought Thuso would get a fresh start at Leopards after so many good years at SuperSport United, obviously overshadowed by reports in ill discipline and whatever of his SuperSport career. And I think Stan Matthews had gone on about how they loved Thuso, and Thuso was the highest player among the highest players, or if not the paid player at SuperSport United. But that didn't work out, and it's now been confirmed that it hasn't worked out at Leopards. Look, Thuso, I think he turns 34 this year, or will be 30 season. I don't know. I mean, if maybe someone was suggesting, in the comments in the story that I wrote today, that maybe if he switches position, he's not relying on his pace anymore as a winger, he could still give another season, 2 seasons. And I tend to agree with that. Having watched the games that he played for Leopards, he did make some impact. But obviously with the chopping and changing of the coaches and maybe some other issues behind the scenes as well that we don't know about, it's led to this conclusion at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's a sad one. Let's hope his best days don't, seem that far away. But it's looking highly likely that, if you leave SuperSport, you get given a bit of a fair nod at Black Leopards in terms of a part of a rebuilding with quality players at your side. And you're the one player who is on the fringes, doesn't make the impact, like you say, due to maybe the coaching and managerial changes. But it just seems, Jonty, that we could be calling curtains. And as much as we don't want to say it, we're not getting any signs from the player that that's not the case.
No, I mean, I think it could be. If he's 34, there's just a lot of uncertainty about when the season's going to resume. And it could be time for him to hang up his boots, or, perhaps find a club in the NFD like some former Absa Premiership players have done, or in the Glad Africa Championship. I just want to touch on the point that Mazola made about the contracts. It's an interesting point because I've been trying to do a bit of work on that today.
Yeah.
But there seems to be, I know that in England they're pushing to get the season done by June 30th because they don't want to have problems with contract law. Because even though FIFA have said, you can extend your contracts, they give them permission effectively. The understanding I sort of got today was if a player could say to a club he wants to abide by his contract, and he might have some right to do that. So if he say, for example, a player signed a pre-contract with another club, he could then say to that club, well, I don't want to extend my contract with you. I want to go to this club. Right. Whether he'd be allowed to play for the other club is a whole other matter, because effectively the season's still going on, so he's still registered technically for the season with the other club. So it's quite a confusing, unprecedented situation that's going to take a bit of untangling. I don't think it's as black and white as FIFA just saying, well, unless there's a blanket decision and everyone agrees on it and everyone says, well, okay, we'll all agree to this. Will play out till the season ends, or unless somehow we get a season done by the end of June.
Yeah. Okay.
I suppose on Jonty's point, I suppose if you are a club that's going to benefit from having a player's contract be extended, even though he was going to leave on the 1st of July, case in point, Luleka at Kaizer Chiefs, and maybe at Thabo Rakgale at Chippa United, and there are several others who have contracts expiring on the 30th of June. If you're a club that stands to benefit from that, because the assumption is that Ernst Middendorp would still be very happy to keep playing George Maluleka instead of just immediately sidelining him, because he's spoken about how he's a core player at Chiefs.
Right.
But then on the other hand, what if George, as Jonty pointed out, what if George decides that he'd much rather start to honor his new club's contract, and Sundowns also want to start paying him? It's unprecedented, obviously, but obviously Sundowns wouldn't be able to play him because he's registered. He would as a Chief. So my understanding is that, or at least from the intermediaries that have spoken about this, and some club officials that have weighed in, they've sort of, especially from a PSL point of view, they seem to be on board with the idea that it makes sense that you would extend. If you extend the season, then you would extend the contract. So I suppose as Jonty suggests, it could have to be a gentleman's agreement of some sort, because when you talk contracts and laws and stuff like that, it is muddy waters. You're not quite sure what you're getting into, unless, and FIFA, I don't know if FIFA can necessarily instruct all member clubs, member associations to have that as the law, to say all contracts extended until the season is done, and not just leave it up to the clubs. Because if you leave it up to the clubs, then you are going to have different scenarios and different reactions to the whole idea. But if it's a rule of thumb, then clubs kind of don't have a choice but to keep paying the players until that particular season is completed.
Okay, and just very quickly, lastly on that Leopards point, how much of that decision do you think them parting ways had to do with, a balancing of the books as well? Clubs are obviously not able to make as much money and
Yeah,
leverage their brands and their teams. How much of it is just, clubs saying, okay, cool, let's start trimming the fat?
100%. I think across all industries, you're seeing that kind of thing. You're seeing it
Mm,
globally, and it would be. I think it would be. I mean, I don't know 100%, but I would think that that's what Leopards have done. They've looked at Phala's contract and said, well, if we can get out paying him a smaller settlement, let's do that now
yeah.
because we're not going to use him next season. And I think you're going to have that. That's going to be another issue in terms of the transfer market, in terms of clubs paying players, even being able to carry on playing players. I mean, it depends sort of how long this whole thing goes on for, because
Mm,
after a certain amount of time, if you're not making money as a business, and that could well depend on sponsors and such like. Also, what if a sponsor says, well, we're no longer we're pulling out of this advertising deal because we're no longer seeing our name in the stadiums on match day.
for sure.
That kind of thing is also a possibility. There's also gate receipts, although it's not. I don't think there's many clubs in the league, if we're honest, that rely on gate receipts to make money.
Sure.
Well,
So perhaps it's slightly different.
Leopards might be an exception to that rule.
Leopards might be one exception to that rule,
That's true,
but I
actually,
do think
yes.
there's a possible. We're going to see across the board that there's a possibility that Leopards have done that
Okay.
to cut some costs as in preparation for this season, next season, and whatever is to follow.
Okay, on that point, I mean, we talk about cutting costs. Maybe it's shrewd business on the side of Mr. Kadodia when we look at the situation at Maritzburg United, Mazola, and how they've now signed Ofori to fresh terms. But part of it smacks that he doesn't want him to leave for nothing, and that if he does let him go, he won't stand in his way per se, as long as the right offer comes along. We speak about it a lot in local soccer, how players are able to move on for nothing, and this strikes me as Ofori probably wants to play for one of the big three, and he's good enough to. But Mr. Kadodia wants to make sure that he gets a good price for him.
Look, I've got a lot to say about this Ofori situation, because I think obviously now, it's obviously also on the back of that story from a Ghanaian website that suggested Maritzburg United had signed a replacement for Richard Ofori by signing his compatriot Felix Anan, which by the way was also offered to Orlando Pirates. I think they obviously trying to get him to the Premier Soccer League.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's a matter of the club having not confirmed it when it happened in the past. But I've kind of been aware of the fact that Maritzburg have exercised Ofori's extension. They've taken up the option to have him contracted to the club until June 2021. And I'm with the chairman on this one. I suppose it's now media speculation, and that's what you get when you don't confirm things. And it happened with Super United and Caetano Tembo. Stan Matthews was constantly being asked questions about the future of Caetano Tembo, when in October, after winning the MTN 8, Caetano was given a contract extension of 2 years, but the club never announced it. So if you don't announce things, you run the risk of speculation. So my clubs has always been make the announcement and end all speculation. If you're quiet about it, why are you quiet about it? If people don't know about it and you haven't confirmed it, then they're opening the door for more and more speculations. And this is exactly what has happened in Richard Ofori's case. And I think when you ask the question, he wants to play for the big three. I think he wants to play for a team that will guarantee him being first choice. Remember,
Right.
when Ofori initially, was set to arrive in South Africa, he was going to be a Mamelodi Sundowns player. He was set to be a Mamelodi Sundowns player, but he opted against signing for Mamelodi Sundowns because he was not guaranteed the number one spot. I mean, it was a time when, obviously Onyango and Kennedy Muyeni were at the height of their careers, and they were number 1 and number 2 respectively. So Ofori decided to go to Maritzburg United instead, where he knew he would constantly be in the starting lineup, and it would boost his chances of playing at the next Africa Cup of Nations and keep him as a Ghana number 1, even for the World Cup qualifiers at the time.
Right.
You fast forward, and I think it's still pretty much the case. He will have no guarantees of being number 1 at Kaizer Chiefs with Itumeleng Khune and Daniel Akpeyi recently being handed new contracts.
Mm-hmm.
He will have no such luck at Mamelodi Sundowns with Onyango still the number 1 and with a long-term contract, and Kennedy Muyeni also been given a 2-year extension to his contract.
Leaving one team,
leaving one team, which is Orlando Pirates. And I think, obviously, given his age, Wayne Sandilands, despite him being the current number 1, because of his age, and I'm not too sure the length of his contract, but if you put together, you assume that he's not going to be the Orlando Pirates main man for long. But of course, he would be hoping for something completely different. And then you have Joris Dele, who, has struggled since he arrived. The Frenchman arrived at played second fiddle pretty much to Wayne Sandilands. Then you have Siyabonga Mponchane, the third choice, and possibly the one likely to make way for Richard Ofori if Pirates do make an offer. And if you put 2 and 2 together, you know that there's a relationship between Maritzburg United and Orlando Pirates in terms of swapping players or buying players from each other. Just this season alone, they've done Makaringe and Ndlovu, and they've got Tebogo Tlolane going on loan to Maritzburg as recent as January. So that's the option here at home. But I think Ofori's also been touted by a team in Germany. He's been touted by a team in Switzerland. So he's got options, and I think his number 1 priority, like Kadodia says, is to move abroad. I don't think top of his list is to still remain in the PSL. I mean, he's got so many of his Ghana teammates playing abroad, and he can also do it, especially what he's done at Maritzburg in the last 3 seasons that he's been their number 1 goalkeeper. He definitely can go abroad and make a case for himself. And I think here at home, although I still believe he could possibly go to any team, any of the big 3 teams, and be the number 1, I think the only team possibly guarantee him the number 1 position is Orlando Pirates.
Jonty, would you agree with that? I mean, Pirates is definitely in pole position in terms of a need, but Mazola makes a good point that maybe he doesn't even have to stay here for his next club. He has options overseas, and that's where you want to go test yourself.
Yeah, I think Mazola laid that out pretty well. It's unlikely he'll go to Sundowns. He's not going to go to Chiefs. Pirates are the main option, as they don't have what you would call a regular first choice goalkeeper.
Yeah.
At Posse right now, Dele has been pretty much a failure there. Ponchane hasn't worked out either, and Sandilands has been the most successful, but doesn't, is getting on a bit and can sometimes be called a bit inconsistent. And I think there's definitely room at Pirates for another strong goalkeeper. So if he's going to move within South Africa, Pirates is the team. It's possible that the new contract he signed is simply a tactic by Maritzburg to get the best possible price for him from whoever does come in and buy him. If that happens, they won't want to just let him go for free or give him away. And he might want to go overseas. I mean, he is an international goalkeeper. I think the next step for him may well be to test himself in a European league. He has done brilliantly at Maritzburg, you could argue that you get plenty of opportunities to showcase your talent at Maritzburg United, because you tend to be under a bit of pressure at the back there, and then you are required to make quite a few saves. Whereas, well, certainly maybe at Pirates under Rulani Mokoeni he would have been required to make more saves. But under the new coach, Pirates have solidified, and I think, I know, just to to conclude, I think Ofori, it's either Pirates. I do think he would be a great choice for Pirates. I think he would do well there.
Okay.
That wouldn't be a terrible step for him, especially if Pirates could sneak into get a place in like continental competition next season. Wouldn't be a bad step up at all. It would certainly be a step up.
Okay.
So I wouldn't mind seeing him at Pirates. But yeah, Maritzburg seemed quite adamant that he's not. Have been quite adamant in there publicly anyway that he's not going. But
Okay.
I think everyone has a price, and I think Ofori's own ambition might take him somewhere else.
Okay, well, let's keep on with the Orlando Pirates there, because they've obviously got a whole bunch of players that are coming back at the end of the season, whenever that is. You've got Molefe at Chipa, you've got Lolani at Maritzburg United, Shabalala's at Bloemfontein Celtic, then Gladwin Shitolo is also out on loan at Golden Arrows. He reckons he'd like to come back and get a fair shake under Joseph Zinnbauer, but, you know, when you hit 30, coaches tend to sometimes look elsewhere for the service to be filled by the position that you play. So how do you see that one panning out? Do you think he can go back to Orlando Pirates and make a good contribution? Gladwin Shitolo?
I think you can go Mazola.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Look, I had not been of the opinion that Gladwin Shitolo had done well for Golden Arrows this season. No, let me rephrase that. I was of the opinion. I was not of the opinion that he was he was among the top candidates for defender or midfielder of the season. He wasn't in my radar at all until he was selected for the national team. You know, out of nowhere. I mean, I was one of the people who were a bit critical of Molefe's decision to call up Gladwin Shitolo when he'd not been in the Bafana radar at all. As the last maybe 3 or 4 years. So now that he is, maybe a lot of people also are now looking into his stats, looking into his performances at Golden Arrows this season, where he's played both as a centre back and as a defensive midfielder. But I look, Pirates do need a defender, and they've made signing a goalkeeper and a defender obviously a top priority for next season. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Gladwin Shitolo is that defender. And no disrespect to him, and I think he's had his chance at Orlando Pirates. And I don't, when you are being loaned out and you are in your 30s, it suggests maybe your future is not with the club. I can understand maybe if he was in his early 20s or hadn't hit the 30s yet, and the club loans him out for regular game time, possibly to bring him back to be the future. If he was seen as a prospect, but at his age, he's you can't call him a prospect. So which probably suggests that his future could be elsewhere. And remember also, yes, Happy Jele, still has to again be confirmed to have another season. Alfred Ndengane as well, it's out of favor. So there is room for another centre back. But whether the coach will be willing to have that, or even the management to make the decisions in terms of signing players, whether they would look to Glad as the man that can fill that gap, unless obviously they can't sign a defender next season, and then they decide, okay, let's bring back Gladwin because we are short of centre backs, and he seems to have had a pretty decent
season
spell on loan and Arrows. But look, I still think I'll be honest, he was not on my radar at all until he was picked by Molefe.
Okay, there we go. Fair enough. Jonty, I mean, Mazola makes a good point. Do you maybe see the likes of Justice Shabalala? We can speak about selection for the national team, but in terms of, age and utility and the season that you're having, does Justice Shabalala also come into the discussion as far as defense is concerned for Orlando Pirates?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of Zinnbauer, having not had a preseason with the squad, he may want just to look at everyone who comes back from loan spells and just he may decide he thinks Shitolo is the man, and he wants him as part of his defence next season. But
Right.
Shitolo does something in training that particularly impresses the coach. He has shown that he's prepared to give players a chance, perhaps Pirates that perhaps didn't have a chance previously.
Yeah.
Guys like, Bongani Sam, who signed but only really started playing this year. Leopards has had a couple of games, but they are both very young, those two. As Mazola mentioned, Shitolo's getting on a bit. I think Chabalala, he may have a chance. I think Pirates' defence is certainly still their weak point, even under Zinnbauer. It's improved, but it's certainly not foolproof.
Yeah.
So they need a goalkeeper, and they need a central defender, I think. Happy Jele's not getting any younger. Be interesting to see if he does stay. But I think, I would probably look at. I don't know about Chabalala's, just in terms of is he Pirates? Is he absolutely Pirates?
Right. Quality.
Top defensive quality.
Yeah.
He's solid, but I don't know if he's somebody who's going to perhaps win a championship.
There we go. So essentially what I'm getting from both you guys is that if they do get in a defender, it'll probably be like a marquee signing, considering that the other departments are well stocked in terms of, talent. So let's see. I guess time will tell with that one. Gents, thank you so much. We're pretty much done for time. But yeah, let's, Jonty, you said you were researching the whole contract thing. Is that going to come up in the story? Are you writing something, or is that just...
there'll be something there tomorrow. I spoke to Mike McCabe about the situation, and he had some interesting points.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main point is that, everybody kind of needs to come together. You can't basically have for just as an example, of George Maluleka deciding he doesn't want to join, he doesn't want to stay at Chiefs, but then another player at another club says he'll stay. I think it has to be some sort of uniform decision,
right?
And it's kind of got to be in the spirit of, we could argue I could argue this in court, but we're just coming out of a major crisis in our sport, and let's all band together and try and get this thing done. If they are going to finish the season at all, everyone needs to come together and just sort of, get it done, and there needs to be a little bit of leeway in terms of negotiations.
Okay.
And I think it would be better if because he was staying till the end of the season. Just in the Maluleka example, he's staying till the end of the season, so let him stay till the end of the season whenever that is, and then let him go to Sunday.
Yeah.
And let it just be like that if it's possible for us to finish this season, which is still a bit up in the air.
Great. We'll have a look for that. And Mazola, on your end, anything we should look out for as far as pieces that you may be working on?
Nope.
Mazola.
Oh, gosh.
He's on holiday.
Okay, guys, just check out his tweets. His tweets and his Twitter.
I just go with the flow. If something lands on my lap, I write about it. But, there's not much happening. So I'm not out there breaking doors and running around with...
making stories where there aren't any. Yeah, I know. I hear you. Okay, gents. Well, lock down safely. I've not said that since we started, but yeah, stay safe. And thank you so much for your time once again. We'll do it on Monday. And hopefully by then, the league, somebody will have more clarity as to what's happening with our calendar. Obviously, that's all got to do with what the government decides, but some leadership on that end would be great. Let's see. Are you hopeful we're going to get it?
Not until April 30. When is that? It's not Monday. I don't think
it's 2 weeks from now.
Everyone's sort of leaning on what the government's going to do, and the government haven't done anything. Or maybe the government will make another announcement. There's a meeting, isn't there, tomorrow on Friday? So maybe
let's see.
Yeah, maybe there'll be another live broadcast
that you're not going to tune into. Gents, thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening. We'll catch up again on Monday. Stay safe. And that goes for you too, listening to this podcast. My name is Kamza Mbatha on behalf of Jonty and Mazola. Have a good week. Take care.
Ciao.